Your automatic transmission may already be slowly destroying itself. And the worst part is that most drivers have absolutely no clue they are the ones causing the damage every single day. There is no warning sound at first, no dramatic smoke, no instant breakdown. The damage happens quietly through small habits that feel completely normal. Then, one day the transmission starts slipping, shifting hard, hesitating between gears, or jerking when accelerating. And suddenly you are staring at a repair bill so expensive, it feels unreal. Thousands of dollars disappear because of driving habits people repeat without thinking. What makes this even worse is that many of these mistakes take only seconds to avoid once you understand what is actually happening inside the transmission. Most people think an automatic transmission is some sealed mystery box that either works or fails randomly. That is exactly why so many drivers destroy them without realizing it. Inside that transmission are clutches, bands, valves, fluid champs, and extremely sensitive components constantly dealing with heat, pressure, and friction. Heat is the real enemy. Most transmission failures begin with excessive heat slowly cooking the fluid and wearing down the internal materials until everything starts failing piece by piece. That is why small daily habits matter so much more than people think. One bad habit repeated for years becomes expensive damage hiding in plain sight.
One of the biggest mistakes drivers make is shifting from reverse to drive before the car fully stops. People do this constantly while parking, backing out of driveways, or making quick maneuvers because they are impatient and want to save 2 seconds. The car is still rolling backward when they slam it into drive, or still moving forward when they force it into reverse. What they do not realize is that the transmission is absorbing that force internally. Instead of letting the brakes stop the vehicle completely, they are forcing the transmission to fight the momentum of the entire car. That sudden stress slams internal clutches and bands together violently, creating wear every single time it happens. The transmission may survive it for a while, but repeated abuse slowly destroys the friction material inside. The simple fix is almost laughably easy. Fully stop the vehicle first. Let the brakes do the work they were designed to do. Then shift directions. That tiny pause removes a massive amount of stress from the transmission. Most drivers think transmission damage only comes from racing or towing heavy loads, but these tiny parking lot habits quietly do damage for years. The scary part is that the transmission usually feels normal while the wear is building. You do not notice the problem until the damage has already become expensive. That is exactly why experienced mechanics cringe when they watch people slam between drive and reverse without stopping.
Another huge mistake is putting the car in neutral while rolling downhill because people think it saves fuel. This habit has survived for decades, even though modern vehicles already solved this problem long ago. Many newer cars completely cut fuel delivery when coasting downhill in gear, which means the engine is barely using fuel anyway. But when you shift into neutral, you remove engine braking, reduce control, and force the transmission to reconnect later under changing speeds. That reconnect may seem harmless, but repeated unnecessary shifting creates extra wear and stress over time. More importantly, you are removing part of your control over the vehicle just to chase fuel savings that often do not even exist. What makes this worse is that many drivers think neutral somehow lets the transmission rest. In reality, modern automatic transmissions are designed to operate in drive while moving. Constantly shifting between drive and neutral during normal driving only creates unnecessary transitions inside the transmission. The smarter move is simple. Leave the car in drive while descending hills. Let the vehicle use engine braking naturally. The car remains more stable, more controlled, and in many situations, more fuel efficient. This is one of those habits people defend for years until they finally learn how the system actually works.
Now, here is a mistake that quietly destroys transmission fluid has warmed up. Accelerating aggressively before the transmission fluid has warmed up. Cold transmission fluid does not flow the same way warm fluid does. On cold mornings especially, drivers start the car and immediately hammer the throttle, like everything is already at operating temperature. Meanwhile, the transmission fluid is still thick, circulation is slower, and internal components are not yet fully protected. That extra stress during cold operation creates wear that adds up over time, especially in colder climates where the transmission deals with thick fluid regularly. The fix does not require sitting in the driveway for 15 minutes wasting fuel. It is much simpler than that. Drive gently for the first few minutes. Let the transmission warm naturally under light load. Avoid aggressive acceleration until everything reaches proper operating temperature. Most people already understand this concept for engines, but they completely forget the transmission depends on fluid temperature too. That small amount of patience can dramatically reduce long-term wear inside the transmission.
Now let us talk about something that shocks many drivers: resting the car on the parking pole instead of the parking brake. This is incredibly common, especially on hills. Drivers put the car in park and release the brake immediately, letting the full weight of the vehicle slam against the parking mechanism inside the transmission. Then later, they hear a loud clunk when shifting out of park. That sound is stress loading the transmission. Inside the transmission is a small locking mechanism called a parking pawl, and people constantly force it to hold the entire vehicle weight instead of using the parking brake to support the load. The proper method is simple, but almost nobody does it correctly. Stop the car with the brake pedal. Engage the parking brake first, then shift into park. This allows the parking brake to hold the vehicle instead of loading the transmission. The difference is enormous, especially on inclines. That tiny habit reduces strain every single day and prevents that harsh binding feeling many people experience when leaving a parking space. It is one of the easiest transmission-saving habits you can adopt immediately. Another silent killer is overheating, caused by constant creeping in traffic. People think slow traffic is harmless because the car is barely moving, but automatic transmissions generate enormous heat during stop-and-go driving. The transmission is constantly engaging and disengaging, slipping internally, and dealing with repeated low-speed load changes. Then drivers make it even worse by creeping forward every 2 seconds instead of allowing proper spacing. That constant micro-acceleration creates unnecessary heat buildup, and heat destroys transmission fluid faster than almost anything else.
Transmission fluid is not just lubricant. It is also coolant, hydraulic fluid, and pressure control all at the same time. Once heat breaks it down, protection drops dramatically. The fluid loses its ability to properly protect internal parts, and wear accelerates rapidly. This is why stop-and-go city driving is often harder on transmissions than steady highway driving. The smarter approach is smoother driving. Leave more space. Avoid constant creeping. Let the car move in smoother intervals instead of repeatedly inching forward every second. Now, here is another massive mistake people believe because of outdated advice: never changing the transmission fluid because someone told them it lasts forever. This myth destroys countless transmissions. Drivers proudly say their transmission has never been serviced, as if neglect is somehow proof of reliability. Meanwhile, the fluid inside has spent years absorbing heat, clutch material, and contamination. Over time, that fluid degrades badly. Once the protective properties weaken, wear increases dramatically. And here is the part many people never hear. A failing transmission rarely dies instantly. It usually sends warnings long before total failure. Slight hesitation when shifting, delayed engagement, small jerks, shuddering under acceleration, rising transmission temperature, strange noises during shifts, burnt-smelling fluid. These are early warnings people ignore because the car still technically drives. Then months later, the damage becomes catastrophic. Catching problems early can sometimes prevent complete failure, but waiting too long often turns a manageable repair into a total rebuild. The drivers who get the longest transmission life are usually not the most aggressive or the most technical. They are the smoothest. They understand momentum. They avoid unnecessary stress. They respect warm-up time. They maintain the fluid. They stop fully before changing direction. They use the parking brake properly.
None of this is complicated, but together, these habits completely change how long a transmission survives.
That is what makes this topic so important. Most transmission failures are not random bad luck. They are years of small habits adding up silently until the damage finally becomes impossible to ignore. The transmission does not care whether the driver meant to damage it. It only reacts to heat, pressure, friction, and stress. Once you understand that, you start seeing everyday driving differently. So the next time you back out of a parking space, sit in heavy traffic, coast downhill, or park on a hill, remember this. Tiny decisions inside the car are either extending your transmission life or slowly destroying it. The scary part is that most drivers never realize which direction they are going until the repair bill arrives. But now you know what actually causes the damage, and that knowledge alone can save you thousands of dollars and years of frustration.